All right, it is 6:32. We are recording, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the meeting started. Again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the second and final community meeting about Ludlam Glaze Park. I think everyone here, for the most part, knows who I am, so I won't, waste anyone's time in reintroducing myself. But I want to go ahead and introduce Mr. Jared Beck, who is joining me this evening. Mr. Beck is the Associate and Senior Urban Planner for Stantec and is serving as a city consultant on this project. Just to recap our last public meeting, we had discussed project background details, design phase 1 and 2, project funding and construction phasing. We had reviewed the preliminary concept plan, discussed the results from the community input survey, and we gathered feedback from the public. If you missed it, the video for public meeting number 1 is available on the project's website as well as the city's website. Before we move further, I want to briefly mention two very important details from the first meeting. The first is that we are entering phase 2 of the design process, which entails using the approved concept plan to develop professional construction documents and obtain permits. Phase 2 will require City Commission approval in order to proceed. The second item is that project construction will likely be phased over multiple years. For instance, between now and September 2021, the city anticipates demolishing the existing home and wooden platform in the back and installing a safety fence system along the water's edge and perhaps another park element if adequate funding is available. The following year, 2022, we will look into constructing another park element such as a children's playground. But to summarize, again, construction will likely be phased over multiple years. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jared now, and he will discuss the park elements and amenities that were added and removed based on survey results and community input. After that, we will go ahead and open it up for public comments. Go ahead, Jared.
Excellent. And Quentin, if you want at any point, feel free to show the visual of the kind of before and after. Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to be with you again for the second meeting. As Quentin had mentioned during our first discussion, and I think touched on again today, we were really pleased with the amount of community feedback that had been received through the survey and the follow-up dialogue, which really seemed to indicate that the initial plan and what we had started with was a fairly solid plan reflecting what the community's needs were, desires. There were, however, some comments that were fairly consistent in numbers that were coming through the community survey, as well as those that had been shared to Quentin, and then also during our first public meeting that really prompted some minor revisions to the concept plan. So what I'll do is just sort of run through those, and we can certainly talk a little bit more at length at any of those if you'd like. The first one, though, and what really came out among one of the bigger changes would be enlarging the dock or fishing pier area. So if you take a look on the left, you can see, we had generally shown basically a replacement of the dock as it is today. And we really took the opportunity to go ahead and try to extend that to a certain amount on the far right-hand side. The intent being that at some point when it is reconstructed, it will really overreach the water's edge. So if you were at the edge of it, you would be able to look down and be able to see some type of water. So the enlargement of that observation dock or fishing dock was really the first main change that we had made in the plan. The second change, and what we had some different comments on in the survey as well as in our meeting last time, was that a few folks thought that perhaps with having the large pavilion by the playground area, that may lead some to have a thought that there may be future rentals and it'd be a facility that really opens up to a broader community spectrum that just comes in for use of that pavilion. And so what we ended up doing was really just eliminating that from the plan. So there no longer is that larger pavilion. In the process, though, we did want to still be able to have some type of shelter in general proximity to the playground area. And in sort of looking at what was really needed at this place, we took the shelter that was by the basketball area and actually just pulled that down and shifted it, which is probably a better location in the first place. So it's sort of on the inside of the, circular area where we have the trellis walkway, which, it will be a very attractive place to be, certainly help frame that view looking out towards the water, but will better accommodate sort of that playground area for the parents without having the concern on any rentals. And then we did, while we were looking at it, think, perhaps we don't need as many shelters as we had initially planned on, knowing that we are going to be trying to save as much of the existing canopy coverage that we can, and that there will be some fairly significant native landscape planted back in there. So we also removed one of the small shelters from the far, what you'll look at the bottom right-hand side. Now, with the shelter changes and the pavilion changes, there were some adjustments in the overall walkways and landscape. However, that will be pretty minor. We know that we'll have to have those regardless. And so that'll be something that when we go into the construction plans, that'll get a little more finalized, and certainly as we go into the permitting for the landscape plans. And then the other change that we had made, and it's a little bit difficult to see on the actual plan itself, but we did incorporate just above the playground area and to the left, some designated bike parking, as well as an area that is designated for whatever type of water fountains we need and whatnot that would really be able to serve the community. So not a lot of significant changes in terms of the number that we did throughout the park, but I do think that those changes being, again, largely the observation dock, removal of a large pavilion, some shifting of the other smaller shelters, and subsequent relocation of sidewalks and landscape, and then also the inclusion of the bike parking and the bubblers, really sort of create the whole plan, I think, in terms of solidifying the comments we had received. So with that, I think we're pretty pleased with the way that everything's worked out. And I'd offer Quentin, do you want to add anything that I may have missed to some of the changes or adjustments that we've made?
No, I think you covered it very well. I would like to hear, I guess, public input, what you guys think on the revised plan, and we sort of go from there.
I have a quick question. First of all, it all looks lovely, and I'm glad you were able to balance, having something that was environmentally appropriate, along with something that was, usable for the community. So just definitely appreciate that. Just a quick question on the children's playground. Is that going to have any sort of protective shelter? I know we worry about like the heat and safety for the kids. So just wondering if that's something that's been considered, or if it can be considered down the road.
Yeah, good question, Terry. So for the children's playground, more than likely we will be looking at a 5 to 12-year-old sort of playground structure. This structure will have some sort of shelter. It may be triangle sails. It may be a full blown out canopy cover that covers the entire existing playground. If, should there be no natural shading available in that area. We also will be looking at, just like with all our other playgrounds throughout the city, some sort of poured in place rubberized surfacing material, not your mulch or anything like that, but this will be the nice rubberized, very playable surface for the kids. But yes, the idea is to have some sort of shading, whether it's natural tree shading or an actual structure for the playground.
Thank you. And just wondering if that rubberized ground is something that I just worry about, runoff and flood mitigation. So I know if those are they porous, semi-porous? I'm just wondering about that.
Yes, it is porous. However, when we construct it, there is a sort of slope that's built in. It's very subtle, so that there isn't any puddling on the actual playground. Of course, if we have shading over it, that shading, water won't come into the playground area at all. It'll be run off from the roofing onto the grass area or whatnot, rather than the playground structure itself.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Good evening. I apologize if I'm not following procedure and I leave it to you to guide me. This is my very first public participation and I'm excited to be here and do that. So if I can give my comment now, I'm happy to do so.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, so I am very excited about the plan for the park and for, you know, everything that I've seen in terms of the park development and the layout and the different components and elements that are going into this park. And I live a stone's throw away from the park, and so I'm very eager to see that. I have young children. I know that this is a amazing benefit for our community, so I thank you very much for your efforts and for considering all of our input very carefully. And so first and foremost, kudos to you, and again, thank you for all of that. I do not mean to be negative. However, as a very close neighbor, there are some concerns I would like to just put out there on your radar to the extent they have not already been considered, and perhaps educate myself on what the plan is to address these. And more so, I think it's during the process, understanding that this is a phased process. I unfortunately must share with you that the current home that's located there has been vacated by the owner maybe 2 days ago, and there has already been vandalism and break-ins. There has been spray painting on the wall of the building. Obviously, right, as per code, or I think it's code, pardon me if it's not, during construction, there will be construction fencing. But, you know, there is a wonderful and beautiful amount of canopy and vegetation at the location. So I'm wondering, you know, what we're going to do before the fence goes up, or when is the fence go up? And then once the, I guess, the construction fence comes down, what is the plan to ensure that, you know, the park doesn't become a place for folks to hang out, maybe when they shouldn't? You know, we are in close proximity to a number of mass transit opportunities, which is a blessing, you know, and it'll give people access to the park, which is wonderful. But on the other hand, you know, this is a very protected from line of sight park, especially the area where the basketball courts are. You cannot see back there at all. I'm curious what the plan is to ensure that, you know, we're not introducing an element to the community that could breed, you know, a hangout location. You know, idle time, it doesn't always render the best outcomes. I know this is not going to be a lighted park, which is great for, you know, the residents, but I don't know what the plan is there. And so I know I'm deviating a little bit from specifically the components of the park because they look great. I gave my feedback. I'm very happy with that. So thank you for considering, but I am a little bit concerned about the process and then into the future, what we're going to do to make sure that the park is protected. Most parks I know have more of a clear line of sight, and it's wonderful that we have the vegetation. I just don't know what the plan is to, you know, address those factors. So if you could please, I guess it's two main issues, talk to me a little bit more about that, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Bianca. All good questions. The first one, and if I miss anything, please let me know. I want to address your concern about the, I guess, the current or the existing vandalism and break-in due to the current owner departing. We have on our radar that her last day is on the 30th for a move out. I imagine, you know, as if you're saying it is probably occurring as far as the graffiti, we'll go ahead and take a look at that tomorrow and try to address that immediately. Last thing we want is some sort of broken window effect where people think it's okay to go out there and, you know, do graffiti and things of that sort. So we'll go ahead and address that immediately, you know, starting tomorrow or so, at least going to take a look at it and addressing that. As far as the construction, the overgrown vegetation and things of that sort, we'll go ahead and look into that, and we'll do what we can to make it transparent, especially during this time where it's unoccupied. We'll look into, I guess, coming up with a plan to figure out how it could be more transparent. This area is going to be treated like any one of our other 15 parks in the city. It's going to be constantly put on routine for maintenance. You know, staff will be coming through there at least one time a day to address any litter, any graffiti issues, any maintenance and things of that sort, that's something we'll be doing on a rotation matter, just like all of our other parks. So the idea is to get eyes out there to address maintenance issues as we see and handle that on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to treat this site as if it's any one of our other parks. You know, you stated it already, there won't be any lighting at the park or anything like that. This park will be open from sunrise to sunset. As far as the basketball courts, just like Dante Fussell Park or Brewer Park, where there's half court basketball courts, all activities will cease at sunset. So we're going to strictly enforce that to the best of our ability. It won't be a hangout spot. We do plan on doing demolition of the property, at least of the house and the dock area within the next couple of months, if not sooner. We actually got a solicitation going out for that demo in the next week or so. So construction fencing and things of that sort will be up immediately in order to address those concerns and to protect the property as well as the city.
So I'm sorry, I thought you were done. If I may reply, and thank you very much. I think there's just a quick point of clarification I would like to make as it pertains to my statement. First, about, you know, the vandalism that has occurred. These are, you know, kids. Kids went there, kids spray painted. If you you know, pull your records, there should be a police report, because this location is on my walking path. I walk by 3 times a day. Like I said, I'm maybe 2 houses away. And so there was quite a police presence, and you could see, you know, it's nothing major, but it's kids. And you know, they were vandalizing, and not a huge concern, but something we need to have on our radar, because this is our community. And because nobody wants that sort of activity. And, you know, with the kids, idle time sometimes, you know, I was a kid, and I can't say as much as I'd like to that I was always, you know, a model citizen anywhere, right? The point that I really want to clarify is about the second point where you were talking about maintenance and overgrown vegetation. That's not so much my concern. I think that, you know, I love vegetation. I think what's more appropriate in a park than park elements than, you know, natural trees and plant life. My concern more is just in light of, you know, having already seen at the very first day the property was vacated, some sort of vandalism, the proximity that we have to the Metro Rail, the proximity that we have to the school. Not that I'm expecting major crime, but I think we need to be realistic that these elements all, you know, in concert could lead to a certain element. You know, there's folks around here, if you know, you drive by the area, that are looking for places to sleep, and that's normal, and that's part of our community, and that's a reality. You know, thank you for bringing up parks like Dante Fussell. They're wonderful, and you know, I hope that we have a similar experience here. However, with the half courts in Dante Fussell, you can see clear through that park. If you're on 57 and you look to the other side, you can see the fence all the way on the other side, almost unobstructedly. The only obstructions that are going to be in your line of sight is whatever playground element or whatever now beautiful sculpture they have. So that was where my concern was, that because of the wonderful vegetation that we have, and you know, it's a catch-22. I certainly am not advocating cutting it down or reducing it. I don't know what the plan is, so I'm sorry to bring a problem with not a suggestion or a solution. I just want to make sure it's on your radar, because, you know, those courts are tucked away, and there's certain parts that are tucked away, and perhaps it's not an issue. I was more wondering what we were going to be doing proactively to make sure that it's not a hangout spot. You know, those other parks, they close at sunset. There are fences that lock, and there's clear line of sight. I'm certainly not the expert in this realm. I am just a citizen who lives here and who could be off base, but at least wants to put it up for your all expert consideration and you know, implementation to whatever is appropriate in response. So, you know, that one little point of clarification, everything here is beautifully manicured. I have no doubt about the maintenance, and I thank you for that. Again, it's more about seeing what has happened, just the reality of the proximity of the elements that we have around here, and just making sure that, you know, we're not introducing something that breeds an element we're not looking for. In other words,
Bianca, if I could just
Yes,
jump
sir.
in for a second, I think
Yes, sir.
you've made a good point, and Quentin, I hope you don't mind that I'm just jumping in for a second. I do
No,
want to add,
please.
and I think it's important to clarify, you know, one of the things that we certainly want to see happen when this plan evolves and it goes into construction is that, the quality existing vegetation is retained, and the main focus is always going to be the beautiful shade trees that exist and whatnot. The plans show, as you look sort of along the street, it would give the impression that it's sort of a solid wall of landscape. And one of the things that I do want to point out is that, the shrubbery and whatnot that is not necessarily good quality will be removed in this site clearing process. And while there will be re-landscaping with native materials, everything that is planted along the street will predominantly be some type of tree. Not necessarily as much, there may be shrubbery, but there will be trees where the canopy is above the eyesight, because one of the things that you've touched on that is really, really important that this park has to have is that visibility is one of the key things that we can do to improve the overall safety and the maintenance and the care of a park. So I just want to make sure that while it may not necessarily always look like that on the plans, that it is the intent that from anywhere that you're on in that street, you will be seen through. So I knew I had heard a couple times about the basketball court kind of being tucked back in there and hidden away. And I want to make sure that it is known that all of that will be seen from everywhere on the street. And what we're looking at are as much the trees that will be above the eye line once that is done.
Quentin?
Yes, Josh Lehman, then Ms. Kamali, your hand. Go ahead, Mr. Commissioner Lehman.
Oh, sorry, please, Ms. Kamali.
After you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. So good to see you, John. Thanks so much, Jared, for your contributions. And it's nice to meet you, Terry and Bianca, and thanks for your community input. One thing, like for Terry and Bianca to know is, since it's not about me, but since we used to have the most neglected parks, or amongst the most neglected parks in the county, out of 34 municipalities, and under Quinn's leadership, we probably have the best park transformation story in the entire county. Now we have amongst the nicest parks in the county. So really, thank you very much, Quentin. And this park is, of course, no exception. But that said, just a couple observations. And I've been championing all these improvements. It's a lot packed into a small park, one. Two, and this is just through experience, one gazebo doesn't even, for a park that size, the traffic that one gazebo will generate doesn't even warrant one gazebo. But it's fine with one gazebo or sheltered sitting area. And then to Bianca's concerns, if you look at Fuchs Park, where you have an existing shelter area or pavilion, don't take my word for it. Just ask the city and county police how many problems that gazebo attracts and the homeless population that attracts. So I know it's more of a sheltered area than a larger shelter structure, but I'd recommend one gazebo, which I've said throughout. And then also I'd like to get a quote for the park a budget, because our budget will be stressed going forward, and there's a lot of improvements associated with this, and that isn't something I've heard throughout this process, right? The park, the planning, and all the improvements. But Bianca, one thing I'd like to say, and I could be wrong, I believe that the part owner, the 50% owner of that property, had a goodbye party for the property, and I believe that they invited residents or invites to bring a can of spray paint or paint to paint the structure before it was demolished. If there's broken windows, that doesn't justify why there'd be broken windows. And it's very curious to me why there would be vandalism, unless it's neighborhood kids within a day or two, because usually people that would do something like that scout out an area in advance, and for a property to be vandalized just 2 days following is very curious. And then another thing is with our police department, I've discussed this before, they will contribute, they'll offer their security analysis in terms of clear visibility and so forth, because you certainly don't want loitering in a park, or you don't want, people aren't reading by themselves, they're not there with the family. And I'll tell you, it raises concern. We see it at Dante a lot, and then they call the police, and people with certain backgrounds actually aren't allowed in parks. But all those things to say. Quinn, again, please address the budget, and then whether one pavilion, maybe Jared, you want to take whether one pavilion would suffice?
Okay. In regards to the budget, Now that we're coming to the conclusion,
Pre-painted the house.
that was Welsh, I'm sorry. Now that we're coming to the conclusion of the design process, we will be able to come up with some sort of probable construction cost. But before we give a number, Commissioner Lehman, we got to finalize the design plan, know what elements and amenities are going to be included there, and then I can give a more accurate probable cost. So that'll come at a later time.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, I didn't recognize my good friend John. How you doing, John? But yeah, Jared, I'd love to hear about the limiting it to one sheltered area or one pavilion. Because
Well, I think
one at Dyson Park with a beautiful children's playground, it is never used, ever. And when there was a standalone pavilion there without the children's playground, it still wasn't used.
Sure, sure. You know, I think that to a certain extent, that's going to come down to a city decision as you go through this construction process and perhaps even some of your budgeting. You know, we had initially it included multiple pavilions because different parks in different communities, very candidly, are different. And in some communities, they are heavily used. And, you know, one of the challenges they have is they don't have enough space for the public to gather. You know, we recognize that this being much more of a neighborhood park, that in fact, that initial 4 that we had was probably too many, and we did reduce it to 2. I would tell you the real reason that we did stop at 2 in the reductions and really the selection of the locations were that, one, we did want to have an opportunity for those parents, if they are at the playground, to have some type of shelter. And it's not just from the sun, but it's also from the rain if they were doing a lunch picnic or whatnot. The other shelter that we kept was the one that was adjacent to the water, because we do think that that is one of the significant assets that this park has, is that view. And there's a place just to come and gather and sit and, you know, be in the shade. And so, you know, candidly, I like the 2, but at the same time, you know, I have no problem saying that as you go through this process, and as Quentin has mentioned before, you know, this will be phased. So, you know, perhaps you do one and you say, well, it's not really used, and maybe we don't need to do that second one. But, you know, I would comment that there were 2 specific intended reasons for the 2 that were kept there, and you know, a reduction to 1 is something that I think you'll probably realize if you need as you go through this process.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. And again, it's a beautiful design.
Madam Manager, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you so much. I wanted to make sure everybody knows I have put a watch order for that park. So the police, different shifts, they drive to make sure nobody is trespassing. And the people that they were there, those 4 kids, they all got trespassing warning. As Commissioner Liebman mentioned, they were the previous owner's kids. But we make sure they never come back. And I asked the police, make sure they clean up all the graffiti that they put on the wall, so they learn they can never damage our properties. But I agree again with Commissioner Liebman that we do have the best park director in Miami-Dade County and Broward and Palm Beach. And we are very lucky to have him as part of our team. And of course, we do have the leadership of our commissioners that they have gave us the opportunity to have these beautiful parks.
Thank you, Ms. Kamali and Commissioner Liebman. Vice Mayor Welsh?
Yes, sir. I just talked to Piper, and she categorically denies that her party guests graffitied the outside of the house. What she does say is that they did write on the inside of the house, "Thank you, South Miami. We love South Miami," and positive stuff like that. The door's going to get locked, and nobody's going to see that graffiti inside. Whether 4 kids were the previous owner's kids, he has 2 daughters. I seriously doubt that they were the ones that graffitied it. Jared, I'd like you to consider moving the basketball court 30 feet to the north to the border and a little to the west to keep it off the canal as much as you can, so that we can get 30 more of usable space to the south of the basketball court. Ms. Kamali beat me to the punch of getting a watch order. When I heard Bianca, I texted the police chief and asked him to put a watch order in the park. So, you know, we think and we react quickly here.
That watch order was done, Vice Mayor.
Yeah. Anyway, on the north side of the interface between the swale and the property, there's a bunch of large collusia hedges, I think, which could get very quickly removed by Public Works so that the police can get a good view of most of the property. It doesn't cost too much money to do that. I congratulate Jared about cantilevering the observation deck over the water's edge. That's a very cheap way to get a water interface. All we need is like a bigger foundation down low and longer beams, and bingo, we've cantilevered over the water edge and cantilevered over the fence to keep kids out of the water. Way to go, everybody. I look forward to, having my residents enjoy the park. And everybody, please come to South Miami's Adopt a Pine Tree, as well as adopt Jamaican Caper and adopt jackfruits on Saturday from 8 till noon. Thank you.
Thank you,
At City Hall.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Terry, then Bianca.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to chime in on the issue of the gazebos. I guess my first question is there a rendering or an example? Because I think we're using pavilion, gazebo, shelter interchangeably, and I'm just wondering if we're all speaking the same language so we know what we're addressing. And secondly, I think we're all sensitive to the impacts to budget, especially since we all know municipalities are probably facing shortfalls, because of the stresses on our economy. If the budget does allow, it would be nice to have some flexibility of seating. I love the idea of having a waterfront, a chance to sit by the canal, but I also recognize that parents and caretakers of small children need a place to sit while their kids are on the playground. So if budget allows and it is appropriate, I think that is some good flexibility of seating for those types of amenities.
Okay, thank you, Terry. We're talking about gazebos here and no more than 12 by 12.
How many do those seat? Are those benches, or what does it actually look like?
Well, the gazebo has the roof structure. It has 4 poles on the side. It's on usually a concrete platform that's 12 by 12, or it could be 10 by 10. And you could either put a couple of benches or preferably a picnic table under that space. And that's just one picnic table. Usually that fits.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Bianca?
Yes, thank you. So first, and very much so not meant to be in a confrontational nature, I do think it's important, especially since this is on the record, to be realistic about what we face here in the community. And I shared via chat what was actually spray painted in neon paint on the exterior of the facility, and it's not South Miami Rocks. It is profanity, and it is advocating for, illegal substances. Yes, it's a bunch of kids. I understand how we get there. Not anything to keep us awake at night, but I do need to clarify that for the record, because that is the reality of what we're dealing with. Jared, to go way back to when you made that clarification for me, I want to say thank you very much, because that completely, resonates with me. Yes, I was looking at the renderings, and of course I'm not a design professional, and coupling that with what I know the property to look like currently, because again, I'm 2 houses away, and currently you can't see through there. So that gives me a lot of, relief to know that there will be clear visibility. So thank you for inserting that into this conversation. I think that's a very, very important component. I did want to respond to Commissioner Liebman's, position about the gazebos. I know that this is a personal preference. I know that, if you ask 10 people, you might get, you might get a split response, but I tend to be aligned with, his way of thinking in terms of gazebos could you know, invites a certain element and a certain shelter for the homeless community who, you know, unfortunately it is a reality. And as much as I, you know, think that there need to be community resources for those folks, I'm not sure that our parks are them. Jared, I understand your point. If we're looking at parks, you know, and this is all my opinion very respectfully, but if we're looking at parks in a vacuum and looking at what features best make sense in a park, I understand gazebos and understand seating for parents. However, if the play area has the plan for perhaps sails or, you know, natural tree canopy to provide some shelter from some of the elements, perhaps I would invite, you know, consideration that that may be enough. Now, I know one of my fellow residents who just spoke before me very eloquently, you know, she's on the other side of that opinion, and that makes sense too. So we leave it to your capable hands to consider that. I would just ask that when we are considering, you know, these different park elements, yes, we consider the park, but we consider the reality of our neighborhood. You know, again, I'll state we are in very close proximity to mass transit. There are plenty of folks out here that are homeless and, you know, currently sleep in the bus shelter right there in the corner where Target is. On what street is that? 80th. There's several folks, and the park that the commissioner mentioned, I'm always insecure to say the name, so I'm just going to refer to it since he already did. You know, they have their own issues over there, and we're less than a mile from that. So again, I thank you all for your attention, for allowing me this opportunity. I'm very grateful to you all for all the planning that you're doing. It is a wonderful design, and at the end of the day, it's going to be a beautiful enhancement to our community that me and my children will enjoy for many years. So with that, I just, you know, leave you with my input, and again, my gratitude for allowing me to express all of it.
Thank you, Bianca, for your comments. I'll touch very briefly on the graffiti. I don't think it matters who did it, or at this point, it's just a matter of addressing it, which we plan to do, and hopefully prevent it from happening in the future. So we'll do our very best as it pertains to that graffiti and getting it resolved. Terry?
Yeah, a question on the north border of the park, just recognizing that it looks like it's going to be abutting Ludlam Elementary. So just curious about what that border is going to look like if, you know, my kids go to Ludlam. I don't know if the security perimeter around Ludlam would extend to, yeah, here's one of them. You know, I just don't know kind of like if there's going to be adults on a playground within like shouting distance of my kids at that playground, like what kind of, you know, to talk to me a little bit about what that north border looks like, I guess is what I'm asking.
Jared, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure, and I you know, would be very candid, Terry. I don't know that we put a tremendous amount of thought into what does that actual interface at the property line be. My assumption, and I think what we've talked about, is that it will be fenced, of course. We did envision that there would be a reasonable amount of landscape that would be either retained or planted in there. Candidly, just to keep the overall aesthetic of what we're trying to do and have that more natural looking neighborhood park. Beyond that, and I think this would speak slightly to the Vice Mayor's comments regarding location and whatnot, is that we will follow the city setbacks, right? So there's certain requirements and spacing we'll have for the basketball court. So depending on where we fit within there, you know, we could do some other type of interface with that. I think that we have definitely more room to move that basketball court up. So that may, you know, limit some of the landscape and whatnot. But other than a fence and what we've shown in the vegetation, I don't know that we've really put a tremendous thought into what exactly that interface is. I know what we haven't done is looked at any interconnectivity. I can say that.
The reason I ask is because I know on the PTA for Ludlam, there have been discussions about having like that windscreen material around the fence, especially as it borders
Sure.
Sunset and Ludlam. So I don't know what happened with those plans, but if it does arise and maybe there may or may not be concern, maybe, you know, we're catastrophizing something that's not an issue. But maybe there is like that windscreen material you can put on the Ludlam side if parents are concerned about, you know, privacy for their kids or what have you.
And that's, you know, and those actually can be fun. We've used those in different public art installations because they can be really cool and they're not expensive and they'll last a long time. And, you know, I think one of the points that I would just offer with a park is, you know, and one of the fun things with Parks Director may not always agree with this, but from the design perspective, one of the things is it's not like a road where you built it and now you can't change it. You know, it's some of these things where we've taken away shelters and whatnot, or we make adjustments, you know, a year from now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now after they're built, you can always come back and add to them, you know, and you know, comments like you just made with that screening, those are great things that we can also be partway into it and say, well, now, you know what, that makes sense. That's an addition we should do, and it's not expensive, and it's a, you know, it's a great idea. So I just want to point out that was a good comment that you brought up.
Cool, thank you.
John?
Thanks, Quentin. Yeah, just a couple of things. I'd like to reiterate the need for shade on the tot lot or the little playground. We've got a lot of trouble, I think, now with skin cancer, and I'm a perfect example. I gotta be tough. I'm on a weight loss program here, but it's all carving pieces of me that have gotten too bad. But anyway, that's really important, I think, and I think that was a great point. As far as the Matt and Piper's property goes, if we're not going to knock that thing down next week, Quentin, I would hope that maybe we could. I know it's ugly, but maybe we should just plywood it up. So, you know, I mean, that's my thought on it, just to secure it. So kids don't get in there. There's not more broken windows, etc. I know that's a big concern for all of us. So that would be my suggestion. I had a comment on the basketball court, and I really appreciate Bob's suggestion about maybe moving it, you know, a little closer to the north area to free up some more open space just for general play. But the size is really kind of looks too big. I had a little, Jared, I had a little exchange with Alicia on this. I looked at some of the half-court plans that are out there, just if you want to stripe out a half-court in your backyard or something. And 30 by 46 is a pretty good size for half-court play. Alicia came back with 50 by 54, which is basically half of a full court. And that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at somebody playing half-court ball. So I'd like us to look at the size of that area a little. I think we can have a great half-court there, but not have it quite as large as it's currently depicted. And I know this is all preliminary. And just one other thing, Commissioner Welsh, what's that you're having? You eating Twinkies? What are you doing there, man? Yeah, I'm glad you're muted. I just wanted to mention to Commissioner Welsh that I think that heavy vegetation on the northwest side of the property along the street is actually sea grape, which is a native, and properly pruned, it could probably at least some of that could be saved. But there's some really nice natives in along there that with some good pruning, I think we could salvage some of those.
Yeah, I planted the cypress along the canal.
Yeah, exactly. Looking good, man.
Yeah, I'd like to remind Jared that it's the commission that sets setbacks. And I could see other commissioners, you know, entertaining setback moving to make a nicer area south of the basketball court. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. Mr. Truby, I see that you joined us. Would you like to make a comment?
I apologize for being late to your meeting. I just got off another Zoom meeting. I'm zoomed out as a teacher at South Miami Senior High. I Zoom all day. I didn't even know what Zoom was, you know, 6 months ago, like most of us. And I'd like to say hello to, I see a lot of familiar faces. Because I'm late, I don't know what we talked about, but I wrote some emails. Bob and I have been friends and neighbors for many years, and we can always talk about stuff like this. And I would I was excited about the purchase for many reasons, but one of the reasons is the canal. I think the canals don't look great, but I think that's our fault. I think that's us as a community, us as people living in this, in this neighborhood. Um, I think it's up to us to make the canals look a little better. Some people really do enjoy them. And so anyway, I thought this was a great opportunity to introduce people to the canal. I'd like to see fishing off the side of it. I'd like to see, if it happens, practice, what do they call it? Paddle boarding and kayaking. It's not that easy. As a South Miami Senior High School teacher, I take about 60 kids out to the Cape Florida Lighthouse every year out at Key Biscayne Biltbag State Park. And of those 60, usually like 50 of them are like, I've never been out here. I didn't even know this existed. So I'd like to see kids get on a paddleboard, get on a kayak in a very small controlled environment like that. And, that's a dream. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But the park is a great idea. And I want to take advantage of it to give those canals the attention they deserve. John, below me. Oh, go ahead, Bob. You're on mute, Bob. Bob, you're on mute.
Unmute yourself, Vice Mayor.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, because of liability, if the paddle boarders went into the water in the flood control dock or flood control boat ramp, it would save the city a whole lot of headache. And I could see the city, making donations to have, put some kind of, dock down there on the boat ramp. But originally, the cost of the concept design and the permits was like 120 grand, and about 70,000 of that was dealing with a dock that we wanted to put at Ludlam Glades Park. The commission griped about it, we nixed it, and the cost went down significantly. So, like in the boat parade, everybody goes into the water at the boat ramp, and that would mean a whole lot less money and liability for the city. Thank you.
I understand and appreciate all the liability stuff. I really do. And I know that. And I said it's kind of a dream. But my point is, let's maybe keep the dream open. I'm a woodshop teacher and they don't want me letting kids use saws. I understand the liability, but it's hopefully we can keep doing things like that. Maybe the world will come around. But anyway, I really appreciate everything all of you guys do. I don't know, can I ask one, can I do a screen share? I have a picture of a dock that I found. Let me see if I can control screen share. It looks like I can. No, the host disabled it. Okay, no problem. But I went and found some docks of, I spend my summers in Chicago because my wife's from Chicago. And we spend every day out in a neighborhood like this with a very nice bike path and a creek that runs through the neighborhood. And it's got a neat dock. And by the way, that's 15 miles outside of Chicago city limits. It's for all intents and purposes, it's like this in the city. But anyway, I took a picture of it and I had it there, but I don't know how to screen share.
Not a problem, Mr. Truby. Thank you for your comments. If you like, you can email me those photos or the of that dock, and we'll take a look at it and see what we can take from it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Lehman, your hand is up.
Thank you. Welcome, Fred. Summer's the absolute best time to be in Chicago, June specifically. Bianca, if you're still there, just wanted to make wanted to comment on one thing you said and provide a little more information. I know loitering's a concern. Once this eviction moratorium expires, which it's about to, there'll be significantly more homeless. And one thing Quinn can speak to, although that's not really the point of this meeting, is there are several sleeping bags that are stuffed in the rafters at Fuchs Park. So it does attract homeless. And the other thing I'd say, Bianca, is thank you so much for recognizing those sculptures. I want you to know I had those all donated. Very difficult even to get support to have those donated. And currently I'm working on an ordinance with the city attorney to have 1% of the value of every commercial development contribute to the city for art and public spaces. That way we can continue to beautify the city. But one thing I'll say to everyone here, which I always say to the commission, is treat the city's budget like you would your own. And oftentimes in our own lives, or the majority of the time, we often don't discuss purchases without taking the cost into account. And that's one thing that's been absent, again, of all of these meetings, how much everything is, right? It's great to pave the sidewalks in gold, but I'd still like to get, for example, we're even discussing the number of pavilions. When are they 150,000 each? And what's the overall cost for this park? All in, right? The outside consultant, the land between 1.5 million and 2 million.
Yeah, so a typical gazebo cost 12 by 12 is anywhere between, I want to say, $17.5 and $25,000 for a gazebo.
And all in the park, the way it stands.
I'd rather not give a final number at this time until we finalize the design plan, and I will feel more confident giving that probable cost for construction once the design plan is finalized. And I can break it down or itemize each amenity or element at the park in order to, give you that price. But if you hold off for at least a few weeks, I can get that number for everyone.
Okay, great, thank you.
Not a problem, Commissioner. I would take one last comment. There's a phone number ending in 2214. You're online. Would you like to make a comment before we conclude? Phone number ending in 2214. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. Okay, I guess we're going to go ahead and end this meeting. I want to thank everyone for their time, for their thoughts and ideas. We'll take this all in and we'll go from here. Anyone have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Quentin. Thanks, all my neighbors.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, Commodore Palanchar.
See you, Bob.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night.